Okay. So welcome back, everybody, for the last Coptic lecture for this semester. So we'll just start off with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one, through Christ Jesus our Lord. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And the Father, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Okay. So welcome back, everybody. And I'm gonna remember to switch my screen over here before I forget, so we don't do what we did last time. But let's see if I can get to the right window. Okay. So today's topic is going to be the prefix verbs, which are basically forms of compound verbs, meaning we're combining two words basically to make like a new verb. So, but before we go into that, I'm just going to kind of review a little bit of what we did last time with the prepositions and pronouns. I won't spend too much time on it, but remember we took several different prepositions with the suffix pronoun, and we saw how they were conjugated in the different ways. So menensa means after, and then we went through the whole pattern: menensoi, menenso, menenso, etc. And remember, the second person plural often has the unconjugated form with fino after it. So menensa fino. Naharen. Naharen is at the face of something, or like basically at or before or in front of. Naharai, again, just basically the suffix pronoun is what changes. Naharai, naharak, nahare, naharaf, naharas, etc. And again, naharentino is second person plural. Khajen, khajen, before. So again, it goes through the whole same pattern, and you can see the same basically suffix pronouns in order. And khajentino. Emtho is a little different because instead of having this suffix pronoun changing, the possessive pronoun in the front is what's changing. So emtho is going to be pa emtho, pick emtho. So it's just a different example of a different way that the prepositions are. Pe emtho, pif emtho. And notice, like we talked about, oftentimes the well, anyway, let's forget about that. Pes emtho, pen emtho, petin emtho, fu emtho. Samenhe is behind. So again, the same pattern, same pronouns. And samenhetino. This one I used to not know how to pronounce it, but samenheyo, just like the word naasneyo. Okay. So anyway, that's kind of what we did last time. And to conclude this semester, we're going to do these prefix verbs or compound verbs. So there's several different examples that we're given here that we're going to go over, but the first ones that we're going to talk about are the verbs with the prefixes ti or chi. So if you remember back from our earlier lectures, ti is the verb meaning to give, and chi means to take. So when we look at these compound verbs, or what they're calling here again prefix verbs, we're going to have to break it up into parts to know what we're talking about. And so the first word, isvo, means wisdom. Isvo means wisdom. So if you prefix it with T, you're saying T isvo, to give wisdom. Or in other words here, they're just kind of saying to teach. So for example, like the professor or the teacher, or like, me, for example, what I'm doing, I'm the teacher, so you'd say, in Coptic, you'd say, Piref, and there, Piref, T isvo. So ref we talked about before, it's like someone who does something. It's just another prefix, so it means someone who does something. So in other words, I would be like the one who is doing the following, which is giving wisdom, so the teacher. Whereas the student, or the one who's learning, let's see, let me get back to it here, is piref chi isvo, because wisdom and chi is to take or receive, so to be taught. So in other words, the verb is chi isvo. So you can say, for example, like I, chi, isvo, mp, osh, and taught, for example. That means I took wisdom of the lesson yesterday, or in other words, I learned or I studied the lesson yesterday, or I was taught the lesson yesterday. So basically, chi isvo means to learn, or to basically to receive wisdom. It's kind of the opposite of ti isvo. O'u is, we know that from the liturgy, when it says Uou nim utayo, glory and honor. T'ou is to give glory, or in other words, to glorify. And opposite again, chi'ou is to be glorified or to receive glory. So you can see it's a pretty simple concept. Gom is strength. So ti gom is to give strength, or in other words, to strengthen. Chigom is to be strengthened or receive strength. Also can mean it on a, not in a literal sense, but in kind of like a figurative sense, like to be encouraged also. And kati is basically, it's another word to about like almost like wisdom or understanding. So it's very similar to ti isvo, but this is more of like this is more pertaining to like understanding, whereas isvo is more pertaining to wisdom. And again, kati is more of like understanding. So that's why ti kati, to give understanding. That means to help someone understand or to explain something or clarify something. Typically, I guess, yeah, they don't have the opposite of chi kati, because I don't think I've never even really seen chi kati ever used, so it's probably not really used in Coptic. So there really is no, there's no opposite of it, chi kati. But they give the example here of chi ismo. Chi ismo means to take a blessing, because we know ismo means to bless. So to receive a blessing is chi ismo. So again, it's a pretty simple concept. In the imperative form, the ti, to give, changes to ma. So ma isvo. So for example, we know from Tinnav, we see it's Savoy. Nick myth me, right? Because Marut choice it's Savoy Nick myth me. So it's Savoy. It comes from ti isvo. But remember, just like I was just showing you in the last lesson, how you can have the prepositions conjugated. Well, you can have certain verbs conjugated, especially these ones that are called the causative verbs. And those are generally the verbs that begin with T. Well, anyway, so you can conjugate it, so you can see how this is, it's Savoy, again, the suffix pronoun here, just exactly like the preposition, like we just talked about. So it's the first person singular. But when it's imperative, we're going to say ma, it's Savoy. And it's imperative. Ma is the imperative of T. So it's going to be teach me, make me your truths or your righteousness. So it's teach me again because the suffix pronoun here is the first person singular. Okay. Makatini, same thing. Instead of T, kati, like you can say like afti katini, for example, that would be like the past tense. The past tense or something would be like afti katini, but that's not imperative. But if you want to say imperative like teach me, like for example, in تسبحة we say بشوي سمكاتي ني كتبكساجي makati ni so Lord. So this is imperative of ti kati, it's ma kati. So give understanding. And who are we giving understanding to? It's me. Remember, it's these pronouns, the direct object pronouns. So give understanding to me. Kata Pixaji, according to your word. Okay, so just an example of it. And here they're saying kind of like what I was saying. Also for verbs beginning with the letter T, add the prefix ma for the imperative. So just like we talked about. Matayo. So tayo means respect. So the imperative form, like to respect, like that's why in the Ten Commandments, we say matayo impikiot mintikmav. Because it's the Ten Commandments, so commandment obviously is imperative form, right? So the Ten Commandments, it says matayo impikiot mintikmav. Right? So imperative of honor your father and your mother. And I can't remember for sure if it says matayo or if it's mataye, and then it wouldn't have. I'd have to go back in Exodus, but it's just another form of it. But just for simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna tayo implikiot. Okay. Matalcho. So talcho means to heal. So the imperative of that, again, you just prefix ma to it, so it's heal me, or basically, heal whoever. So if you can say matal, you go to the doctor and you say matal joy, heal me. Matal to him. Okay. Matamo. Tamo, again, it's basically this means to inform or to tell or to show something to somebody. It's basically to inform or show or tell. So matamo. And matiho. Tiho means to ask or pray. So ma tiho is the imperative of that. So it's kind of like a stronger form of that. We talked about some of the prefixes beginning with or some of the compound verbs beginning with the prefix er. Let's see, we saved it from last time, but that doesn't look like I saved it. But remember, er comes from the verb iri, which means to do or to make something. So iri is the full form, but er is like the pre-nominal form. So remember the full form, you're always gonna have iri, or whatever. You're gonna have this linking particle and then the noun. Like for example, like I made food or something. You're gonna say I iri mp Kum is means food. So I iri mp akum. Or so that's the full form. Or you can say I er p kum, because that's the pre-nominal form of this verb. So you don't have to have that m. You don't have to have the linking particle. That's the difference between this form of iri and this form of iri. So in the same sense, if we're going to use this form of it, we don't need the linking particle. So here we have er u'oini. Er u'oini. U'oini is light. So it means like to enlighten. So we know, like from Bescha, we say fi etaf er u'oini impennos nemnival. When we're reading like Ukatikisis or the conclusion to it. Let's see, so itaf er u'oini impennos nemnival penhit. So er u'oini. So remember this is the further demonstrative, then the relative, then the past tense, right? So that who he made light. So in other words, he who enlightened. Penus, nous is a Greek word for mind. So our mind, and again it's singular. It's not plural, it's not menus, it's not our mind, it's our mind. So he who enlightened our mind, nem, and nival, the eyes, this is plural now, ente, penhit, again it's singular heart, our heart. So he who enlightened our mind and the eyes of our heart. So er u'oin, to enlighten. Er fakhri. Fakhri is basically means medication or medicament. So er fakhri is to, I mean, I guess more precise, it means to medicate or something. Not really to heal or cure, because it's more of like what we talk about talcho. That was up here somewhere. Talcho, that's more of like, to heal. But fakhri is medicine. So er fakhri is to give medicine or to medicate or treat, basically. I guess treat is probably the better way. Okay. Ihmot means grace. So er ihmotnan means to grant something. And here they said to give grace, not really to give grace, but to grant. So we know this very well because we say, again, this is the imperative form of it, but we say choice. Ari, ahmot, man, mp, ko, evol, ente, right? This is just a compound verb of ihmut, but this is the imperative ari ihmut, which we're gonna we're gonna look at next, I think. But that's one example. That's just kind of one example of where you see that. So it means grant. This is an imperative, so it's not really to give grace, but it's to grant or have grace. Irnovi. Everyone knows this from Lent. We say I irnovi, bashois isos koni evor. So I irnovi, bashois isos koni evor. So again, past tense, I irnovi. So irnovi means to make a sin, or to make sin. So I made sin. So I sinned. I sinned. That choice, my Lord, Isos, Jesus, Koni evol, forgive me. And remember, we talked about what Koni evol really means, so we don't have to go into that again. Irhoti. Hoti means fear. So irhoti means to fear something. Like in Tin Owi and Sok, we say Tin irhoti, Khateki. Tin irhoti. Tin irhoti, Khateki. So we Tin Owi and Sok, Khanpen Hitir, and then Tin irhoti, Khateki. So present tense, simple present tense. So we, irhoti, so we make fear, or in other words, we are afraid. Khataki, before you. That's one of those prepositions. I can't remember if we'd studied that, but if we'd gone through that one yet. But we are afraid before you, or we're fearful before you. And again, it's from Tin Oli, so Erhu'u. Hu'u means abundance. So erhu'u is to make abundance, or in other words, to increase. So we know from I'm blanking at it. I think it's the second host, either second host or third host. I can't remember which one it was, but we say kismaro ekerhu smaraut ekerhu chisishani in it, right? Ekerhu smaraut. Chisi. Erhu. So erhu. So to increase. So you. This is the simple present tense again. So you do abundance blessing. You do abundance. Actually, this is a qualitative series. So, and again, you increasingly exalted forever. So the best way to think of it is you are increasingly blessed. You are increasingly exalted forever. And I think that, like we say, and increasingly to be praised and increasingly exalted, or something like that. It's it's kind of complicated with that. But really, it's just you are increasingly blessed and you are increasingly exalted forever. So you can see where erhu. So you erhu. So you are increasingly smaraut, blessed. You are increasingly exalted forever. Erif mivi. So if mivi is, so you got to break this one down because mivi is a thought. If mivi is the thought, if mivi is to make the thought, or in other words, to remember. So that's where if mivi comes from. It heats. It heats. This means the beginning. You never really see heats by itself like you do some of these other words. It's always combined with the heats. So it means to begin. Ipsalim. So everybody knows this, like from the hymn, Vlogi menos ten Ipsalim. Right? You say ten Ipsalim. So Ipsalim is a Greek word meaning a song. Again, to do or make. And this is the present tense. So we make song, or in other words, we sing. Ipsalim, to sing. Emepsha. So emepsha means worth or worthiness or fittingness. So if emepsha is the worth or the fittingness or the worthiness. So if emepsha is to be worthy. Romi. Again, Romi means man, or in the general sense of man or mankind. So Romi means to become man or to be made man. So like we know from the liturgy, when it says Afsharik, so Romi. So there's a big difference between what those two meanings are. So we took the compound verbs earlier, so let's go ahead and just study it together here. Chitarix. O Ron. Oops, let's spell it again. Alpha Chi Sarix or Alpha Ron. So Sarix is the Greek word meaning flesh. So Chi Sarix, to take flesh. So he took flesh. So that's why we say he was incarnate. So it's kind of someone with the physical, the action of taking flesh. And of Rome, he became man. So he took flesh, or in other words, he was incarnate, and he became man of Rome. So we talked a little bit about the imperative form of iri. So you have the standard form of iri, you have the prenominal form of iri, and then you have the imperative form of iri, which is ari. So ari o'oini. O'oini is light, so we had o'oini. But if you're giving a commandment, like to turn on the light or like enlighten something, you see ari o'oini. And then same thing, psalin is a song, so you're telling someone to sing. You say ari psalin. Like again, ari psalin if tabash. Ari ehmot, we just talked about it. Choice ari ehmot nan and piko evol and ten novi. Ari if nevi, telling someone to make the thought, like in the Gregorian liturgy, we say Ari if nevi of choice. And then, for example, also on Hos Erof, we say Ari hu uchas. So, Hos Erof Ari hu uchas shani in it. Right? Hos Erof. So, Hos Erof, that means sing to him. And then the command form of, and we took hu'u means increasingly. So, sing to him and make increasing exaltations. to him, because chesf comes from chisi. So sing to him and increasingly exalt him with an exclamation, because it's imperative form here. And so here they're pointing out that remember we talked about this is the definite article here, right? Let's see. Right here, so make the thought. Remember we said it's make the thought? So if you're talking about like remember somebody, you're going to make the thought of who? So you're going to make my thought, or you're going to make his thought, you're going to make her thought, make our thought, make their thought, for example. So, but if you're not using one of these possessive adjectives, and you're using like an actual noun, that's why in like the liturgy of say arif mevi b'shois enni kekaun. Okay. So since we're not saying arif po mevi b'shois, we're saying arif mevi. So make the thought, O Lord, of the kekauni, the others. Kekauni means the others. But if there was no noun, you're going to say arif po mevi. And you just use the possessive adjectives. Another example here, gem. Gem means to find. It comes from the verb jimi. Jimi means to find. So that's the full form. Remember we talked about iri, and then the pronominal form is er. Well, same thing with jimi. Jimi is the full form, and then gem is the prefix or pronominal form. So same thing. So what are we going to find? Gem, gom. Gom means strength, so find strength. In other words, it means to be able to do something. So you can say, for example, like say, like someone's asking you to come over to say, and fi ish. Learn about ish in a minute. So I am not able to. I cannot find the strength to come over this way. I can't come over. So find strength, or it also means like to be able to do something. Gymnomti. Gymnomti means comfort. Gymnomti means to find comfort. And then heyo means something that's beneficial or useful. So gem heyo is to find usefulness. Some other examples here. Ship means to receive. Again, it's the pronominal form of shofi. The pronominal or prefix form is ship. So that means to receive grace, ahmot, and kah is suffering. Of ship and kah, or of course, right? Ship and kah. So he received suffering, received affliction, receive pain. Khisi is kind of, khisi means trouble. So to tolerate something, that's what they're saying here. So to be able to receive trouble or suffering, it's another way of saying that. And then like what I was talking about before, kind of a different way of saying to be able to do something. Sometimes you have this prefix of ish. Ish saji, ish iri. So for example, in POIC we say se ishnav erok an, right? Se ishnav erok an. So they, the present tense, third person plural, they can look to you not. So they cannot look to you, or they cannot see you. Se'eshnav erok an. So this means to be able to, or can. Eshiri, same thing, to be able to do something, or can do something. So for example, can you speak Coptic? You can say Se ti ish saji en ti asbi and so let's put dot dot dot. So se ti ish saji en ti asbi and ish saji. So yes, I can speak in TSP, the language, and then in Coptic. Okay, so that's how you would use ish. The other way, using jemjom, you could say se ti ish jemjom and saji in TSP. Or if you can't, you can say nt. And you negate it with an on. Nt ish jemjom. That just means I am not able to, or I cannot find the strength to, or I'm not able to. You wouldn't use ish by itself, so you couldn't say nt ish an. There's no such thing as that. Ish is always prefixed to something. So you can't say nt ish an. That's no such thing. But you can say nt ish jemjom an. That's fine. You can say nt ish saji, and that's fine because the ish is always prefixed to some verb. So that's kind of today's lesson, and a lot of things that we come across quite a bit. So we've got a few minutes left, so we'll kind of do what we normally do, which is go through the some readings and try to analyze some of the things that we've been studying. So as everybody probably knows, tomorrow's the first day of Kiah, so I pulled up the readings for the first of Kiah. So if there was Ashaya tonight, this is what we would be reading. So we can read this together. Psalmos to David Alleluia. Nik Owib ev eti hioto en umethni. Ni eth Oweb en tak ev ethavil ev David ekvok. I softi en ochebs en pa Christos. If efiri the echri egof and Jefet Oweb en ti. Alleluia. So Nik Owib. Owib means priests. So Nik Owib is the second person plural masculine possessive adjective. So your priests. We still haven't taken this verb form here, but ti hioto, it's a good example of a compound verb. Hioto means upon them, and ti means to give, so to give upon them, and that's the way that you say in Coptic to put on clothes or to get clothed. So it just means to put on. This means put on, just like in English, put on a jacket or whatever. So here they're saying put on them, they shall put on them righteousness. So your priests, they shall put on them righteousness, or your priests shall be clothed with righteousness. Because again, it's the third person plural here, so it's the passive voice again, because who is the they? There is no they that's clothing them. So that's why we said in English, your priests shall be clothed, instead of they shall clothe your priests, because who's the they that's going to clothe them? So it's, again, that's another example of the passive voice we talked about. Ni'eth oweb, and talk. So the further demonstrative, the plural, the relative. So those which are holy or pure, oweb means holy or pure, and talk of you. So those which are holy or pure of you, or in other words, your holy ones, or here they just say your saints to summarize all that. Ethadil, they shall rejoice. Ethadil means to rejoice or be happy. Eveh, it means concerning. David, pick Vok, your servant. Vok means servant. So your priests, they shall be clothed with righteousness. Those which are holy of you, they shall be glad or rejoice concerning David, your servant. I softi. Softi means to prepare, so this is the past tense of I prepared. In uchibs, chibs is a lamp. So I prepared a lamp. Empa Christos. So we know Christos is the Greek word we use for, it means Christ, right? Christ. But what is Christ? Christ is the anointed. So Christos, it really means the anointed. So we're going to translate it as anointed instead of Christ when it's pa Christos, pik Christos, when you're going to have some kind of possessive adjective. When you have a noun, when you have an article like the Christ, be Christos, it's going to be talking about Christ. When it has a possessive adjective, it's going to be talking about an anointed. So I softi, I prepared a lamp in ochebs, ba Christos, for my anointed one. Efiri means like a flower. When a flower blossoms is when this is used the most. Firi. So efiri. So he shall blossom, or in here they say flourish. I guess flourish comes from the word flower, to flourish, right? So efiri shall blossom or flourish. Echri egof, upon it. And je, namely, that which is holy of me. So my holy one, or that which is holy of me, shall flourish upon it. Okay, so it's just exactly what it says here. Okay, let's go through the gospel reading. Luxasi Othio Simon, reading from the gospel according to St. Matthew, and as blessing be with us all. Amen. Owo nafkoti pe enje isos, chen tigalile atiers, efti ezvo chen nu synagogi, o efi oish, en pi evangelion, en tetimet uru. Owo ef erfachri, eshoni niven, et chen pilaos. Owo a tefesmi, I evol, chen tisiria tiers. O av ininaf en o niven et temkiot, chen nushoni, nemnu umkav, en omishin miti, ni etani dimon nemau, nem nietoyen permo, nem nietshil evol, o av erfachri erou. O av moshin sof, en jehan nishtien mish, evol chen ti Galilea, nem timitien vaki, en nem Jerusalem. Nem ti Judea, nem himir en pior denis. Etafnav dhe enimish, af shenaf e bshoj e gjen pita u, o etaf hemsi, af I harof en gjenif matitis. O etaf uon en rof, nafti izvo na u efko emmus. O neyato en nihiki en piet nevma, jeta u tetimet uro en tenif owi. O neyato en niet erhivi tino, je enta u petonatiho era u. O neyato en nirem rafsh, je enta u petna erekturomin dikahi. O neyato en niet hoker, nem niet ovi en timet mi, je enta u pet nasi. O neyato en ni nait, je enta u pet nana, je enta u pe etuna naina u. O neyato en niet oeb gen pohit, je enta u pet nanav efnoti. وأنيتو أن يرف إرهيريني جأنت أو فتوناموتي أرأو جني شيرين تأفنوتي وأنيتو أنية تفشوغي إنساو الذاتي مثمي جهت أو تا تيمت أورون تاني في أوي وأنيات تينو الشوب أفشنشوغي إنساتينو وأنسشاش تينو وأنسجاه فتؤوني فان إنساتينو الجامث نوج إروتين أذيت راشي أو ثليل جا بتنذاكي ونشتي باخني في أوي هايريتي غار أفتشوغي إنساني بروفيتيس أنا قاوتين انتو تندا فهمون بكاهي الشوب ذا انت بهمولوف أنا ملهفن أو إن بافش جمجم جاء أهلي أفيل إنسهيت في إيفول إنسهومي إيجوف إنجيني رومي انتو تن بأف أوين بكوزموس مون إشجوم انت أوفاكي كوب اسكي هيجن أوتا أو وذا إن باوتشيري أو خبس انسكاف خاومنت الله إشوكاف هيجن تيلك نية أوشف إرؤويني أوون نيفان اتشوب خان بي بايريتي ماربتن أويني إرؤويني إن بأمثو أني رومي بوبوز إن سناف إن تنهفي أوي إثنانيف إن ستي أو إن بتنيوت تخنيف أوي في أو فا بنوتيبي شاء أنتني تيرو أمين. So it was a good reading, the Sermon on the Mount, if you didn't figure that out, but has a lot of good examples actually of the lessons we've been taking. So it's kind of long, so I'll kind of go through it quickly. We won't go through everything, but we'll just kind of focus on some of the things we studied today. So, Koti means to go around. So Naf Koti, he was going around. Nafkoti Pesa, and he was going around, namely Jesus, Chen, Tigalila Tirs in Galilee. Tirs means all of Galilee. We'll talk about Tirs and Tiro and Tir later, probably next semester. F, Tiezvo, we talked about Tiezvo. Tiezvo, to give wisdom. So he was going around, namely Jesus, all of Galilee, giving wisdom or teaching, right? Chen, nu synagogi, in their synagogues, Awo F, Hioish means to preach or proclaim. Ephioish and P Evangelion. Evangelion is the gospel, coming from the Greek word angelion, meaning like a message. Evangelion means good, so good message. So preaching the good message or preaching the gospel. And te timit uru, of the kingdom. Or if Fakhri, we talked about Fakhri today. So Fakhri means it's the treating. It's like essentially it's like a medication, but Fakhri means essentially giving medicine or treating. If Fakhri is shoni nivan, it's khan pilaos. So treating, shoni means illnesses, nivan all illnesses. It's khan, which are in the people. Wo a tifismi I evod. This is an idiom. Ismi is voice. When we say tif ismi I evol, so to come out, so his voice came out, it's basically a way of saying he became famous. So a tif ismi I evol, he became famous. His voice came out. Chen tisiria tirs. Tirs we just talked about, tirs above, so all. Tirs means all. So in all of Syria. Uo of Ininaf and Uonivan. And they brought him, Ini means to bring, and they brought him Uonivan. Uonivan means person or people all. So and they brought him everyone. Et, the relative. It's hemkiot, is a verb meaning who's afflicted, or basically it's imkah. Remember we talked about imkah a minute earlier? It means suffering. So everyone who's suffering or afflicted. Chen nushoni, in their illnesses. Nimnu imkav, and their sufferings. In umi shenriti. This is an indefinite article. U nish imriti means many manners and many diverse forms. Ni ete, remember we talked about the further demonstrative and the relative. Those who nidimon nema'u, those who the demons are with them or basically those who are demon-possessed. Nem ni'et oi, those who are permo. Permo is basically like lunatic, like it says here. Nem ni'et, again the further demonstrative. Shil evol means paralyzed. Shil evol is paralyzed. Owo of erfachri era'u. Of erfachri era'u. So he treated them. Owo of Moshi and Sof. Remember, Moshi means to walk, and then Sof means behind. Owo of Moshi and Sof, so they walked behind him, or in other words, they followed him. And Je, namely, Han Nishti and Nish. Nishti, remember, means great. This is the plural indefinite article, so think of it as like some great. Mish means a crowd, so some great crowd. Evol Khanti Galilea, from Galilee. Nimti Miti and Vaki. Remember, Miti is the feminine form of number 10. So, and the 10, Vaki. Remember, Vaki is big cities, not just like a tini, which is a village. Nim Jerusalem, Nim and Jerusalem, Nim Judea and Judea. Nim Himir. Himir means on the opposite shore, basically, is what it means. Mir is like the shoreline, and Himir means on the opposite shore of the Jordan. So here they said beyond the Jordan. So I just kind of want to go through some things. Let me pick out a couple things in the rest of this reading that we took from today. Naf ti izvo, again, ti izvo is the compound verb we just took. He was giving wisdom or teaching. Here's an example of hibi. Hibi is more like a wailing or mourning. So hibi means to mourn. So here's another example of we talked about. Aklironomin means to inherit. So eklir, or an inheritance. So eklironomin means to inherit. So it turns the noun of an inheritance into a verb to inherit. So I'm just going to skimming this because I know we're about to run out of time here. Niref hirini. Everyone knows hirini means peace. So hirini is to make peace. So if hirini are the ones who make peace. So in other words, the peacemakers. I'm just kind of reading through this. So, okay, so Eshgemgum, remember we talked about Eshgemgum a little while ago? So, أنا منهف إنه إمباث Eshgemgum J. So this is the opposite. This is the negative of the habitual. So negative habitual. Remember, instead of shaf Eshgemgum, it's the opposite of that, Empath Eshgemgum. So it's an inherent truth, but it's a negative inherent truth. I can't remember if we went through that or not, but we're going to go through that next semester if we didn't. But it's the opposite of like shaf Eshgemgum, which is the habitual. This is the negative of the habitual. Empath Eshgemgum. So he is not can find strength. So he cannot find strength, and again in the habitual sense, anymore. J also means anymore. Ehli, for anything. So in other words, it is not anymore capable of anything. So here we have, it is no more good for, no, it is that here thenceforth good for nothing. So it's talking about after the salt lost its flavor, it is then good for nothing. So empath, eshgemgom. So an inherent truth, it cannot find strength for anything or cannot do anything. Shaf R-O-Ini. Shaf R-O-Ini. Remember we talked about R-O-Ini, make light. And now we've got the affirmative of the habitual, which we took. So it enlightens, or it makes light. E-U-Univan, to everyone. It's Shop, who lives. Fen Bi, in the home. Ma repetin O-Ini R-O-Ini. And that's it. That's pretty much everything that we've taken for the semester. Or I mean for the so far. So I just kind of wanted to go through that so we can get through some more examples. But you can see how we're starting to see a lot of these things. So I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the time off. I think we're going to come up with a final exam, but we'll everyone's follow up with check on with the website so we can get the final exam information to you. I'll try to make sure to do it sometime this weekend. So otherwise, if anyone has any questions, feel free to send us messages anytime. But otherwise, we'll conclude with a prayer. Okay. Kenneth Ranam Fiot, Namibshiri, and Bernem Wathawab, Onot Yanot Amin, J Pinyot at Khanif Owi, Marif Tuvon J Pekran, Maris E and Jatikmit Uru, Petahnak, Marif Shopi, Emefriti Khanet Fe, Nemhi Jan Pikai, and Oiken Terasti, Mifnan and Fou, Awokani Etero non evil, Emefriti Hon and Tinko evil, and Ni Etewon and Tan Rau, Owo Emperenten of Ponepirasmus, Allah Nahmen evil Habibat Hu, Fen Bechristos Jesus Ben Choice, Jetok Titimit Uru, Nintigom, Nimpi Ou, Sha'anen Tiniene, Tiro Amin, Khenefran Fiot, Nibshiri, Internim Watawab, Onot Yanot Amin. Okay, everybody, have a good night, and we'll get in touch with the final, and I'll see you guys next semester. All right, take care.